next year,
Yes,
BYU.
yes, this is Blue Goggle Nation, bro.
We will see.
Don't forget about those guys.
Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline is a now repeat guest, Matt Brown of SB Nation. Matt, welcome back to BYU Sports Nation.
Hey, it's great to be here. Great to chat with you guys here. I really appreciate you sharing the picture of my church ball basketball team.
Yeah,
with the entire internet.
I just asked during the break, what is that picture on Twitter that we tweeted out? And yeah, it's your church ball team.
Not just my church ball team, but the state champion church ball team.
Oh.
So I think that means that
Well
I'm ready to go challenge everybody across the country now.
Well, I participated in the region champ, so I think we'll meet you in the middle. I don't even know where
that
you
sounds
live,
good.
but we'll meet you in the middle.
Championship somewhere in Missouri. Let's do it.
There we go. With BYU softball.
Matt Brown, church basketball champion and beat reporter for SB Nation, specifying in college athletics. I do want to start with this now that we've gotten the state championship out of the way. When are you going to write an article that mentions BYU Sports Nation, Matt?
That is a fair question. I should admit that during my conversation here with one of the BYU TV producers, I guess I erred in not putting this quote in, but they did mention that you guys got an Elvis-like reception at the Middle Tennessee State game as a testament to the superpower reach of this program. I'll have to put that on my to-do list here later in the summer.
Okay.
And in case you missed it, BYU Sports Nation, Matt with SB Nation wrote an article about how BYU TV wouldn't be a deterrent in getting to the Big 12. So what did you learn about BYU TV? And feel free to speak openly. About BYU TV. In the process of writing this article, you spoke with Michael Miner, the senior coordinating producer here at BYU TV Sports.
I did. I may not be the typical target audience for a lot of these programs, right? Like I knew what BYU TV was, but I never had it in my home growing up. I spent my life in the Midwest and the East, and my parents were cheap, so we didn't have any these fancy satellite packages. So I knew a little bit to the extent that I've watched Conference on BYU TV, and I know this program. I know a few other shows, but if that's my level, I knew that my peers, both within my company and some of the other reporters that don't regularly interact with Utah, know even less. And I think we've seen that a little bit from some of the blogs or some of the columns that are written that just sort of say, well, BYU has a TV network, therefore that makes things complicated, without really taking a look at what that TV network actually is. So I'm glad we had a chance to, maybe clear up some misconceptions about this being a 24/7 sports network, or the kinds of programming, the institutional mission. And when you really get into the specifics, I think it becomes a bit more clear how this is something that could fit in supporting a network or supporting conference programming rather than competing with it, like, say, a Longhorn network might.
You just mentioned that BYU TV is not a 24/7 sports network, which some people think because we do air our fair share of live events, and it's not like the Longhorn Network. What were some other misconceptions that you felt like could be cleared up through your article?
I think it's you want to take a look at this, because it's not just the 24/7 sports network, but there's a chance to look a little bit more in depth into actually what kinds of sports or what kind of sports programming is done on here. It's not like this channel is showing 5 or 6 football games a year. It's not like it's a for-profit entity that is going to fight for some of the same rebroadcast situations that, say, the Big Ten Network will, knowing how important those are. And we talk a little bit more specifically about some kind of the support or shoulder programming, similar to what this is, which then can be used to actually augment what a network or other specific conference programming is being done.
So at the end of the day, did you feel like BYU TV would not be a deterrent in getting into the Big 12? Where do you stand on that?
I don't. At the end of the day, I don't think it's nearly as big of an issue as perhaps other columnists or other writers are making it out to be. I'm not sure if it's going to be a gigantic boon necessarily, but the idea of a potential expansion candidate not being accepted because of disagreements over the rebroadcasting of volleyball games or a couple of out-of-conference basketball games against Division III teams or something, is that really going to be the sticky point? That just seems really hard to believe, especially when you have a chance to bring in a network that is so firmly intertwined with one of the Big 12's biggest broadcast partners, and that's ESPN.
The College League manager at SB Nation, Matt Brown. Follow him on Twitter at MattSBN, is joining us on BYUSN right now. Where do you stand on all of this Big 12 expansion talk? Now, to give you some background, Jerem is like, look, just let me know when something happens. I'm good to not really get into it. I am more of in the middle, like, it's intriguing to me. I think it's interesting. It certainly creates off-season fodder. There are some people that can't get enough of it and just hinge on every single word. Where do you stand on this?
I have a lot of sympathy for people who are more on the I never want to read about this again, because it feels like a lot of the stories that we're writing, we could just change the timestamp and plug it back in a year or two ago, and it's similar to the same story.
Every May!
I know. There's been so much talking and deliberating and data. I'm like, man, I wrote all the data you needed like 2.5 off seasons ago. But on the other hand, if we're being honest, like, let's look at what the other major national college football stories are. Like, would I rather write another Big 12 story? Or would I rather write another article about Jim Harbaugh's satellite camp tour? Like, if that's my choice, get me on the phone with Bob Bowlesby and let's talk about Texas Tech for the next month.
Yeah, exactly. And as this continues to, it simmers and then it, heats up, dies down, the whole thing. Do you think that the Big 12 is going to expand at some point in the future, and if so, when?
I do. I expect some kind of resolution to be to come out here before the beginning of football season.
Really?
I think we finally reached. Yes, I think we legitimately have finally reached a tipping point within the administrators in this conference, realizing that if all we do is continue to just publicly deliberate again and again and again, we are hurting the public perception of this league. We need to actually make a decision. And, what decision that's going to be is going to depend on what they decide to do with their television situation, which is really kind of complicated and problematic. But I expect this story, one way or the other, to be done or reach some kind of conclusion before the actual football games start in September.
Now, who holds the power in that conference? Because David Boren has been the face of the expansion conversation because he's been the almost voice of the Big 12 to a degree. I know Bob Bowlesby is commissioner. But then Texas sits there and is kind of quiet, and they make the most money, and that speaks the loudest. But Oklahoma produced a college football playoff and Final Four team, so they feel like they have a little more sway.
It really is still Texas being the most important voice in the room, especially because just about any decision this conference wants to make is going to hinge on what happens with the Longhorn Network.
Yeah.
If you can't reach a conclusion or an agreement with the Longhorn Network, you can't start a conference television network. That completely limits your options here. Now, as Texas isn't being as bombastic as it was a couple of years ago because they have a different university president, they have a different athletic director, and I think their bargaining position is a little bit humbled, given that they've struggled a little bit, and it's not the boom times that things were a couple of years ago. But it really is still, with them being the biggest voice, they have the most influence on some of these other smaller Texas programs that are not going to have the same post-Big 12 options that Texas will. But certainly Oklahoma is a very important voice in that group as well.
You say that you expect some sort of resolution in terms of whether or not the conference is going to expand before the football games start. David Boren said before the end of the year. Do you think that he said that to take some of the pressure off of the media pressing for what the answer is going to be, and you think that really it's going to be yes or no before September 2nd?
That's certainly a possibility. West Virginia's athletic director, I think a week or two before that, had indicated that they want a decision within the next 90 to 180 days. By the end of the year, it's going to buy them some wiggle room if things get a little bit weird with these TV conversations, or if they need some extra data for whatever reason. If the first 100 spreadsheets weren't enough, it would surprise me if they allowed this storyline to continue, and that's potentially undermine a really good Big 12 football team throughout the year. If the national conversation becomes, hey, look, Baylor's doing all these great things, but what about Cincinnati, which will definitely happen if this doesn't get wrapped up before the end of the summer.
If the Big 12 expands, do you see it expanding to 12 or 14?
I think 12 is the most likely. I know that the Big 12 has modeled 14. They have discussed that. They've discussed 14 with affiliate members, 14 with full members. If you are starting a conference network, there's some advantages to going 14 in increasing your conference inventory. You're just going to have the rights to more football games. But that would also create some revenue dilution, and I think would make it a little bit less palatable, especially since those administrators aren't super enthusiastic about any one particular program. So 12 would be make the most sense as a compromise. I know.
Matt Brown of SB Nation with us on BYU Sports Nation. So besides Texas, which other Big 12 schools are leaning more towards no when it comes to the expansion conversation?
So the Cincinnati Enquirer reported that it was Texas Tech and TCU. And from the little that I've kind of heard specifically about that, I think TCU is more firmly on the no side than Tech. But I don't think either of them are so far gone down that point that they wouldn't potentially change their minds. Texas still has a large amount of influence at TCU because they're the reason that TCU is in the conference. There's a little bit of a mentality of wanting to shut the door behind them, or if adding other teams would potentially damage their own position here within the league. If you have a smaller athletic department, losing a little bit of that Big 12 money divided up matters more than it does if you're a behemoth athletic department like in Oklahoma. So, those two are going to be interesting. But even everybody else that's pro-expansion has different goals or what they want out of expansion. That's kind of been the general theme of this conference, really, since it's been created, is that there hasn't been any kind of unified voice or direction for any kind of policy, like there is for the SEC or there is for the Big Ten. And that makes it hard for them to really do anything.
Matt Brown of SB Nation with us on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Okay, let's switch gears. We've gotten the Big 12 update. Now we get to the other burning topic within BYU football, and that is who will be the starting quarterback for the Cougars against Arizona on September 3rd, Taysom Hill or Tanner Mangum?
Now, if I recall correctly, gentlemen, the last time I was on this program, one of you asked me about what I thought Taysom Hill was going to do. And I went into this long, prolonged spiel about how I thought it was very probable that he would be playing somewhere else. And then later that afternoon, he announced that he was staying, and I looked very stupid. I am very stupid. So I will allow myself the opportunity to potentially do that again. I would be really surprised if it's not Tanner. I think Tanner fits a little bit better with the direction that BYU's offense wants to go under their new coaching staff, and Hill's exact health situation is still a little bit of a question mark. But I would imagine that they would both play.
All right, Matt. Hey, sorry about making you look dumb, man.
I mean that's a big part of my job.
That was exactly.
I have to look dumb, and I have to own that dumbness.
That was not intentional, and I hope you know that.
Take risks. And, yeah, that's not on us. You're right.
Matt, really intriguing stuff. Great article. If you haven't read it, where can people see that article right now, Matt, if they haven't read your inquiry into BYUtv and how it fit into Big 12 expansion?
Sure. If you head to vanquishthefoe.com, which is the SB Nation BYU affiliate, you will find that story on the front page. And if you scroll down, you're going to find a couple other of my most recent dispatches on the Big 12, including some statistical breakdown on where the football teams all stack up and some of the other data behind how this process is playing out.
You got it, man. Matt, thanks for the time.
You bet. Anytime, fellas. Take care.
Matt Brown on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your financial future. He says Tanner Mangum will be the starting quarterback between BYU and Arizona on September 3rd. How far away is that again?
Countdown